Good afternoon to those of you here with us in the Kit Live Theatre, and good morning, afternoon, and evening to those of you joining us online. It's an enormous pleasure to be with you here today for this special event for Feminist Edge. Whether you're in person or with us online, you're most welcome. I look forward to the next couple of hours of engaged reflection, of inspiration, I hope, and some discussion on the topic of today, which is Feminists on the Edge, Reshaping Global Solidarities and Activism in the Context of Global Backlash. My name is Rhiannon Pyburn. I lead the gender team here at KIT, and I'm the director of Feminist Edge. Before introducing our guest speaker and our commentators, I want to give you first a bit of an introduction to Feminist Edge. Some of you know Feminist Edge very well, and you're experiencing it here this week, and others less so. So as a little bit of background, in 2015, the United Nations Women Training Center hosted an expert meeting on training for gender equality, and it was focused on advancing the field. One of the recommendations was to map and review the way that gender trainers are trained and how they're developing themselves professionally. And KIT advisors at the time in 2016, they took up the task and they did that review. A key conclusion was that the feminist spirit of Beijing, 1995, that was triggered there had been muffled and was obscured in gender training. So gender training had lost its feminist edge. This program then was developed by KIT Institute and UN Women Training Center to sharpen that edge, to strengthen the capacities of gender trainers across these three interrelated domains. So conceptual depth and clarity, training skills and methods, and feminist practices. We work with mid-career professionals, like many of you in the crowd, to reinvigorate gender training, reignite the political fire, and reflect together on its transformative potential and how to bring that to life. So the program began in 2017, and we're really delighted now to have the 6th cohort here with us in Amsterdam. And we're proud to have almost 150 alumni, some of whom are with us online right now, who are working across a wide range of organizations around the world. So those are some of the organizations. But now let's shift to the program for this evening. In just a moment, I'll introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Lina AbiRafeh. After her talk, I'll then introduce two commentators who will each have a few minutes to share their reactions to Lina's contribution. And then we'll open up the floor in the room for your questions, your comments, for your insights, for some discussion, and also for the comments and insights online. And then we'll close at 7 o'clock Amsterdam time. And for those of us here in the KIT Live Theatre, please, you're welcome to stay with us for some drinks and continued conversation afterwards. And then with that, whoops, I went the wrong way. There we go. With that, it's my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker for this special event, Dr. Lina AbiRafeh. Lina is a widely recognized Arab American feminist, activist, and author. And in over 2 decades of working on gender issues in development and in humanitarian contexts, her work took her to Afghanistan, Haiti, Lebanon, Nepal, the Central African Republic, the Democratic Republic of Congo, and many other countries, on and on and on. All of this in an effort to address gender-based violence and to promote gender equality. From 2015 until 2022, she served as the executive director of the Arab Institute for Women at the Lebanese American University. She continues to support the Institute while also working independently as a thought leader and as a fearless change maker for global women's rights. And she advises UN agencies, for example, NGOs, as well as academic institutions. She sits on advisory boards, including the Global Institute for Women's Leadership and the Forced Migration Review. And she holds a PhD in development studies from the London School of Economics and Political Science, where she did research focused on gender-focused aid in Afghanistan and the aftermath of the Bonn Agreement. She also holds a master's degree in international relations from Johns Hopkins. I hope you're not blushing yet, Lina. Her key publications include her doctoral work in 2009 that was on gender and international aid in Afghanistan, the politics and effects of intervention. In 2022, Freedom on the Front Lines, African Women and the Fallacy of Liberation. And in 2023, with Rebecca O'Keefe, Yalla Feminists, Arab Rights and Resistance. In addition, she's written many, many articles on other mediums and other platforms, and her voice and expertise have been featured on CNN, on Al Jazeera, France 24, BBC, and so on. She's also delivered TEDx talks and at Women Deliver. She has many, many honors for her work, including being named one of the top 100 most influential people in gender policy by Apolitical in 2018 and 2019. And she received the Women in Power Fellowship in 2022, and other fellowships alongside that from the Council of Foreign Affairs and the British American Project. She exudes a commitment to and a passion for justice, equity, and amplifying the voices of women and girls across the world. And today we'll hear from her. She'll share some insights from nearly 30 years of working to advance gender equality, drawing from her experience in the Middle East and North Africa, and more broadly, and especially her bold new initiative, Better for Women. Today she's going to reflect on the current global backlash against women's rights and feminist responses pushing back on that. So for this year's Feminist Edge cohort and program alumni and all guests, I invite you to reflect on your own context, the backlash that you might be facing, and the opportunities emerging for reshaping solidarities and activism. Lina, welcome. Thank you for being with us, and the floor and the screen are yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. First of all, let's start with this. Look around. Look around this room. Look at your fellow activists. Look at yourselves. This is a remarkable collection of committed feminists, all in one room at one time. I mean, what a blessing, what a gift. So imagine then how many of us exist outside of this room. So many more remarkable women that we have yet to reach, that we don't even know about. I mean, we know there's, 4 billion women in the world? Extraordinary, active, remarkable women. And here we are still arguing for equality. Why? Why are we still arguing for equality? So the truth that you know very well is that the world is actually failing women. It's not a surprise. I don't need to tell you. And it's not stories of other women over there that we don't know and can't reach. No, it's all of us, and it's right here and now and in this room and in our space and people we know and ourselves. The state of our feminist union is under siege. And we know it's a fact. And that's because, not a single country in the world has achieved equality, not even close, not one. And we're generations away. I think we last heard it's going to take us 130 some years to achieve equality. I don't know who is planning to stick around. I am trying to, but it is not very likely that we see it in our lifetime. We continue to have disastrous social indicators. We are the majority of the world's poor. We know this. We are marginalized across every aspect of our lives: healthcare, education, the economy, politics, leadership, decision-making, far from equal, and not just that, but also under attack. So we're living in very dangerous times, and in fact, now more than ever, we are not able to make full and free decisions about our lives, about our bodies, about our futures. And to make it worse, I bring you all the bad news that you probably already knew. We are losing the rights that we thought we had, all right? This is not a surprise. All of this we know. But, I keep asking myself, why? But why? But why? Because none of this is making any sense to me. The way the world is moving is not in a direction that I personally like. So let us start with this. Well, the rise of authoritarianism. I mean, you see it all around you. Look around and look at who's leading us. Look at who's in charge. How are they leading? What do they care about? What issues do they support and endorse? Who is benefiting from that? And who is losing? I mean, authoritarianism is alarmingly trendy right now and contagious. And in fact, if we ever really needed to understand toxic masculinity, if we ever needed visuals to picture what that looks like, we have ample evidence right now. Like, there is no doubt in our minds we understand what this looks like. Patriarchy is entrenched now more than ever in the institutions that are supposed to protect us and support us. In politics, in the economy, in religion, in culture, all of it, male-dominated systems that sideline women and girls. We have ample evidence of this too. I would look at Afghanistan now, a country I know and love, where I spent many, many years. Now Taliban 2.0 is effectively erasing women all over again, silencing them, restricting them from school and work and mobility, and all of the things that we've seen over and over again. Discrimination exists in our laws and in our policies. Countries are still enforcing laws, laws that are on paper that restrict women from their rights, our rights, to inheritance, to divorce, to citizenship, and certainly to bodily autonomy, the right that is under the most threat and has been pulled back, repealed the most in a place like Saudi Arabia, where I grew up, actually. They have, yes, eased their guardianship laws, for sure, but women are still facing inequality across the board, and it is in no way safe to be a woman or easy to be a woman in that kind of a place, nor in many other places. There is a backlash. We are seeing it. We are feeling it. It is everywhere, permeating every aspect of our lives. Anti-gender movements that are reversing our hard-won gains, certainly targeting our bodies, our sexual and reproductive health and rights. And things like LGBTQ inclusion that are also on the chopping block, gender-sensitive education. The US has been a great example of this. Where I now live, in the US, we are watching the overturn of Roe v. Wade, as you know, that happened a few years ago, rolling back abortion rights. In a place like Hungary, for instance, anti-gender movements are embedded in policy. They are shaping policy. And here we are, rolling back rights in a world that is actually moving the wrong way, despite all of us and our talent and our persistence and our advocacy. The world isn't moving in the right direction. Crisis certainly plays a part. It is driving displacement, fragility, insecurity. That is becoming the global norm. Just one look at the news, conflict, climate disasters, economic collapse, all of the things that we're seeing that exacerbate existing inequalities for the most vulnerable, women and others, of course, and then humanitarian responses that are inadequate, that are not keeping up, that are under-resourced, that are not meeting gender needs, did not before and certainly don't now. For instance, in a place like Haiti, where I also lived, right now, violence, civic unrest, violence against women are amplified, are magnified. Gang violence is rampant. It is a very scary time in Haiti and in all of these places. The examples can go on and on. I know this is affecting all of you and your work as you work in civic space and feminist spaces that are shrinking, that are being suffocated and silenced, religious and right-wing movements that are gaining power everywhere, and we as activists are being silenced. Censorship, criminalization, intimidation, online violence and harassment, and all of the things that go with it. Again, one of a million examples in a place like Iran, right? Protesting against the hijab will put you at the risk of imprisonment and violence. So the ideals of woman, life, freedom, we have not yet fulfilled them. We're not giving up on them, but we haven't achieved them. And then we're also in a climate of very weak support from donors and allies and funding restrictions and all of the things that are happening in this world that for me in my 30 years, frankly, are seismic. I never imagined that we'd be in this state where we are being denied not just the resources, but the right to speak and to exist and to articulate what it is that we're doing. In fact, we're undoing it, we're erasing it. I watch as colleagues and friends take down reports that they've written so painstakingly and advocacy work that they've done that they are now erasing from their histories and their records and their CVs. It is frightening. We have always been in a climate of reduced resources. I mean, I won't tell you that the past was any better. It wasn't, because we have always fought for the little funding that we have had. We have always had conditional funding, right? And pressure, this I find remarkable, especially now, to depoliticize our work. I do not know, and please somebody tell me how we depoliticize fundamentally political work, that is the work that we do. And yet, here we are with our rights that are treated like a light switch that we are flicking on and off based on who is in power and what they feel like and what they support. And this is not a way to live, not for our fundamental rights and freedoms that cannot be denied and should not be at the whims of whatever, whoever is in power. So globally, we're in crisis, no surprise. And yes, our feminism is on the edge. And that is why I am a feminist fire starter. What does that mean? What does that mean? So that is somebody who ignites change boldly, unapologetically, urgently, like we need right now. It's not about waiting for permission. It's not about perfection, certainly not. It is not about a title, a platform, a degree in gender studies, none of those things. It is about sparking action wherever we are with whatever tools we have in whatever ways that we can do it by questioning power. There's a lot to question right now. Challenging patriarchy, also a lot to challenge right now. And refusing silence, the silence that has been being imposed on us right now. Feminist fire starters are in it 100%. There's no halfway, there's no sort of, there's no maybe. You cannot be on the fence about feminism. You cannot be on the fence about equality. You cannot be on the fence about genocide, for instance. Let's use that as an example. Fire starters are resisting injustice every day in loud and in quiet ways, in whatever ways that they can, fueling movements with courage and with clarity, and especially at this moment when the world wants to burn our progress to the ground. So a feminist fire starter, now you know, is somebody who turns rage into resistance and resistance into results. We light the match and we will keep it burning. And the world needs feminist fire starters, and I think you know why, but allow me to tell you. Again, this backlash is strong and it is getting stronger. It is not just about opposition to women's rights. Yes, it is that, but also it is about deliberate destruction and dismantling, a dismembering. It is catastrophic. And if that is not enough, we are doing it in the context of the most crises that we have seen since World War II. So in a context of conflict, we also are in conflict and crisis. I mean, it's instability on so many levels, and it is becoming our unfortunate reality. Now, I, as you might know, am Palestinian and Lebanese, so I was born into crisis. It is baked so deeply into my DNA, for better or worse, and also born into a female body, and so I know what insecurity and inequality and injustice feel like, also deeply in my bones. And that is why I continue to be a feminist fire starter. Our feminisms exist everywhere. But now they must fight even harder to survive and imagine, to succeed even harder. Yes, there has been progress. I mean, I will not be all doom and gloom for you. I'm sorry for that. But the inequalities abound. And the opposition and the destruction and the tools that are trying to dismantle us are everywhere. So we need to be everywhere in whatever form we can be. I mean, I cannot emphasize that enough. That is the spirit of what a fire starter is. And I think I've always been one. I was 15 when I went to my first protest and I held up my first sign for equal rights. And now I will tell you I am 50 and we have not achieved those equal rights, and I'm holding up my sign, and I will do that every day with every last breath that I have. But I can only hope in the time that I've spent so far that I have used it wisely in defense of what I believe in. My feminist life has had 3 phases. So my humanitarian life that you heard about, where I spent about 2 decades and covered maybe 20 different countries. My academic life, I call myself an accidental academic because I stumbled into academia as an activist wanting to ignite change in that space and ran the Arab Institute for Women, which is an extraordinary place that is the very first in the region, over 50 years old, and one of the first in the world. Talk about the good stories that are never told. There is one. And I'll speak about that a little bit later. And my phase 3 is my independent phase, where I have my little organization called Better for Women, named because that is what I want to do. Build a better world for women. Give me whatever space you can, whatever space I've got, whatever time I have, whatever platform I have, and that is what I will do with it. So it doesn't matter how, it just matters that we do it right now. We know we've all signed on to a task, a calling, a duty that we are not going to achieve in our lifetime, at least we're not likely to. So the question that we have to all ask ourselves is, what are we going to do with the lifetime that we have? What are we doing? Me, feminist firestarter. And to make it more complicated, an Arab feminist firestarter. My region has been in the news a lot lately. Unfortunate. Not enough of the good news, too much of the bad news. So my region, which I refer to as SWANA, I don't know if you're familiar with that acronym, Southwest Asia and North Africa. And I use that acronym because it is a reclaiming of a colonial naming, which we used to use MENA, which is a Eurocentric term that is rooted in colonial mapping, and we don't use that anymore. At least we try to encourage people not to use that. We try to encourage people, not just from the region, from whatever region, whoever you are, to reclaim your language and your words and your terminology and your space and your borders. Self-definition, right? It is our right, and it is long overdue, and we've inherited all of these labels and boundaries and borders and brands that no longer fit us. We have outgrown them, and we have agency, and we now need to define ourselves. So, SWANA. Because I really believe that some words deserve deconstruction. I love words, and I love the precision of words. I love the evolution of words and the time that we're living in to experience that and to reclaim those words that no longer serve us. And another one that I use is global majority. That's another important one for me because it is the world's majority. 80% of the world is Black, Indigenous, people of color, BIPOC, 80%. So, well, there you go. That is the majority. I mean, there's no... The numbers tell you, it is very clear. So back to the SWANA region, since I do want to cover, there's a lot of ground to cover there. That is, as you probably know, a large collection of diverse countries. I won't go into the details about their diversities, but I will tell you about their commonality, and that is a backlash, surprise, against women's rights and fundamental freedoms. Here we are, right? That is the one thing they clearly share. Cannot argue that. Many of them, too many of them, share a reality of crisis, right? The conflicts, pandemic or post-pandemic, or wherever we are now, displacement, climate crises, government failures, collapse, disasters, this chronic instability or this teetering on the edge of crisis all the time and the insecurity that comes with that, this is pushing women farther from equality. We know this has a detrimental impact on women's rights and women's lives, because crises dismantle the systems we have of social protection when we have them in the so-called stable times, which again is scant. Crises displace communities, destroy communities, and create humanitarian needs that we couldn't meet then and we certainly can't meet now. Look at Sudan, for instance, massive displacement, 25 million people in need of assistance. How will we meet that need? Look at Syria, barely emerging from decades of oppression and war. How will we meet that need? And look at Lebanon, still reeling from attacks by Israel in the last few months. And yesterday, only yesterday, having commemorated 5 years since the disaster of the Beirut blast. And where is the accountability? None. So how will we meet these needs? Yes, we are in crisis, and crisis has become our unfortunate norm. But zoom out for a second with me, because I think there's something bigger here. There's something bigger at stake, something bigger going on. Because when I look at these crises, and I compare them to Western priorities for support and solidarity, those priorities are quite fickle and short-lived, and the priorities, or lack thereof, for me at least, have been exposed. Now we see things for how they really are. And we see that when the victims are not white and have very little to offer, the wealthier West, We see what that looks like. We see the normalization of the killing of Black and brown people. This is what I see. And, I wonder what we see and what we choose not to see, how much we're able to ignore, how much we're able to tolerate, what is an acceptable amount of violence, what is just normal for what happens over there. Which brings me, of course, to Palestine. A live stream genocide and forced starvation that is happening right in front of us, on our phones, in front of our faces, perpetrated by Israel, funded by the US, endorsed by many European countries. Cannot lie or deny what we see. And yet, I feel very cynical when I say that the minute things are quiet or it is stable enough, humanitarian agencies will come rushing in because there is money to be made to build what we have watched people destroy. There will be a scramble for resources. Everyone will want a piece. There will be money that comes to this. And what is the cost? What is the cost of this for our values as humanity? For the systems and the structures that we painstakingly built and thought would protect us? The Genocide Convention? International law? I don't know. The validity of the UN and its Security Council? I no longer know. I no longer know how to feel about the institutions that were set up to protect us. And right now, as somebody who is Palestinian, Lebanese, and a feminist, and all of those things at once, I feel that we need to look critically at the organizations around us, the organizations where we sit, the organizations that are supposed to support us, and judge them quite harshly on their performance for Palestine, which I think at best has been performative. Because solidarity is not just when it's convenient. And values aren't just when they're economically valuable. This genocide, it is our social justice movement, and I think we have failed it. I think Palestine is humanity's litmus test. And I don't know personally what is worse anymore, waking up every morning to more bad news or to the reality of our global impotence. I don't know what is worse. And I feel that we need to ask our organizations and even ourselves, how do we measure up? Because we will have to live with the choices that we've made in this time. And will we be able to live with them? Palestine is also a feminist issue. Because, as we should all know, all of our struggles against oppression are interconnected. Because justice is not selective. Because feminism demands this of us. It demands that we confront the systems of power and control denial of rights that women experience. Because the violent realities of occupation and what has happened, the displacement, militarization, the denial of basic rights, these are compounded for women. We see this playing out everywhere. No one can say they didn't know. And we see that Palestinian women face so many layers of oppression, patriarchy, colonialism, Zionism, and they are resisting those on so many fronts every day in so many different ways as caregivers and organizers, frontline workers, freedom fighters, and they're doing that without recognition and without global support from our so-called feminist family. You know, this illusion that I had of this feminist solidarity has been ruptured, not entirely destroyed, just dented a little bit with everything that is happening. At the same time, Palestinian women, their bodies and their lives are politicized and restricted and weaponized, and they are leading still with clarity and courage. And what are we doing? So Palestine is a feminist issue that has never been a doubt for me. I've had to debate it online excessively with all kinds of trolls and crazies, and I will continue to do so now, almost 2 years into this. And I will not back down from that because as a feminist, I stand in solidarity against structural violence, and that is what we have. And I firmly believe that feminism that ignores Palestine is not feminism. Silence in the face of this injustice is complicity. And our feminist action, as we all know, has to be intersectional, decolonial, global. It has to be for everyone, or it is for no one, it is nothing. And that is why I'm a feminist fire starter. Again, throughout the region, women's rights are fragile. The region itself is fragile, sure, but women's rights are a casualty and a cornerstone of that fragility. You know, I remember 2016, I was sitting in ESCWA, the Economic and Social Commission for Western Asia, for the International Women's Day celebration. And the then Executive Secretary, Rima Khalaf, said, "We are celebrating the many achievements of Arab women, but primarily in the art of survival." Now, she's not wrong. But also, if we are celebrating survival, the bar is too low. Yes, we've survived, and we've struggled to do so, absolutely. And we're living in this pattern of regression over progress, this exhausting dance where rights are given, taken away, setbacks more than gains constantly. We know it from experience, from anecdotes from our lives, from the global rankings that present a very grim picture of the region where it ranks last or next to last in just about every global index that we've got. I think 150 years to close the gender gap. Again, please stick around, drink your kale smoothies, and stay with me because I want to see it happen, and then I want to die very happy knowing we've achieved equality. But still, obstacles to equality, no surprise, exist and abound across every sector: health, education, the economy, politics, of course, our bodies, our lives, discrimination that's codified in the law, violence against women, which for me is our non-negotiable starting point. You know, if we're not safe in our bodies and in our lives, then none of these things matter. You know, starting there is critical for me. But that remains unaddressed and unaccounted and absolutely overwhelming, perpetrated with impunity. But you know, that sounds like everywhere, right? We're not going to vilify the region because I could be talking about New York. That sounds like absolutely everywhere. At the same time, in the region, it's patriarchy that is the gravest injustice that shapes the laws, governance, religion, culture, norms, everything all over, permeates every aspect of our lives. And our governments themselves are patriarchal through the policies that they implement and through their repression of feminist movements. But that too sounds like everywhere, right? That I could be talking about the States right now. You know, I have to say, it's time to stand up and say no more. No more. No more of this. To quote another a legendary Arab feminist, Dr. Nawal Saadawi, she said, "Women are half the society. You cannot have a revolution without women. You cannot have democracy without women. You cannot have equality without women. You can't have anything without women." She was talking about Arab women, but it applies to all of us. I think it's true for all of us. We are there, not negotiable. And that is why Feminist Firestarter. That is why. So in my phase 2 of my life in academia, I joined the Arab Institute for Women, I found that I had done a very interesting transition from working in the international space to suddenly becoming the local partner, the so-called local partner. Now, as the local partner, I found that donors in their infinite wisdom were telling me the priorities of the region while they sat in Oslo and Geneva and wherever else. Suddenly, you know, my local knowledge was cute, thanks, but it really wasn't what was important or valuable or recognized or respected. I was invited to speak at CSW, Commission on the Status of Women. Here I was on the panel, and the panel consisted of the head of Agency X, the head of a program, international NGO, country director, I don't know what, you know, all sorts of international experts, and me, the local partner, I was to speak last. Well, everybody spoke in turn, you know, the panel, it's the most boring structure you can imagine. Speaker, 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 speaker. Lina's turn to speak, and the panel is empty because they had all left. They all left. So I spoke to an empty table because, you know, the local partner, it's a nice to have, it's not a must have, right? It's a tick box. We have a local partner. There's a brown person in the room that's keeping the seat warm, and that's good. And I spoke anyway, and I was told by somebody afterwards, "Gosh, your English is so good." Really? Meaning they underestimate women from the region. They underestimate all of us. I mean, unbelievable. And that's no more. No more being underestimated. No more. So my last book you heard was about young Arab women's feminist activism. I mean, talk about fire. It's called Yalla Feminists. I interviewed over 200 amazing young people from around the region, all demographics and whatever. You know, our region, it's primarily young, 30% youth. So, you know, these young people, they're on the front lines of change. And I was in awe of them, learning so much from the way that they are organic and intersectional and indigenous. You know, their stories, they need to be told. And that's in part because the world expects and accepts that we're oppressed. And I really wanted, this was my love letter to the region. I really wanted to undo that because I felt like they were so extraordinary and I was learning so much from them and in constant awe. And really just so appreciative of all their efforts and wanted to support them and amplify their work. You know, we in the region were bombarded, well, bombarded literally, but also bombarded figuratively. We are too often reduced to stereotypes. We're backwards, we're powerless, we're victims. Our struggles are reduced to clothing without context. As far as the West is concerned, you know, we've been reduced to very superficial divisions, like hummus is okay, but headscarves are not okay. You know, there's all of these ideas about the region, these very tired Western Orientalist tropes that we still live with. What year is it? I mean, how on earth are we still shackled to that? I cannot believe, but I have to say no more. No more. I have to fight these things all the time on so many fronts. All of us do. No more. No more. Because the world needs to know that our feminisms exist. All of us. They are plural, they are diverse, they are evolving, they are indigenous, they are deeply rooted, they are born of need. They did not need to be imported or imposed. No one needed to teach us this. They are homegrown, they are 100% ours. And I am surprised how many people do not know, maybe because I live in the US, how many people do not know that feminism is not Western? You know, this is a battle that I constantly have to fight, a story I have to explain over and over again. How can I be Arab plus feminist? Seems to be a mystery that blows many minds, many small minds. But I say over and over again that the desire for equality, the desire for freedom is universal. Nobody needs to teach us that. Yes, but having said that, of course, in a room full of feminists, we will not deny that there are challenges. Right, we're not denying there are challenges in our region, in the Swana region specifically, where national agendas very often supersede feminist agendas. And when we're in a situation like the context of Palestine, for instance, where a national struggle for a nation state very often trumps the struggle for women's rights. So there are tensions and there are challenges. And even when women are there leading national uprisings as they are very often excluded from decision making. And yet we fight on both fronts. We fight the local and global patriarchies. We fight against the internal oppressions that we face and the foreign occupiers at the same time. Now, within our feminisms, there are also divisions. Our movements can be fragmented and have been because ideological difference, because divisions like rural and urban and tribe and class and sect and other identities, divisions that too often tend to destroy us, and I wish they would not. And we look at women in leadership, too few, and often can be co-opted by state agendas, become state feminists that sideline real reform in favor of maintaining the status quo once they've achieved power. And these divisions are dangerous for us. They are undermining our work. They are turning some of the movements into things that are elitist and disconnected. And I don't want to see that happen to us. And I also don't want to see us continue to be broken up by the competition for funding that is becoming more fierce and more scarce and more dangerous. And that is not our fault. That is because of the donor funding models that pit us against each other in a fight, a scramble for scraps, instead of coalition building, instead of seeing the commonalities and enabling us to work together as we should. And we can counter that. That is also on us. At the same time, I look at our young people. And I think there it is, that feminist resistance. It is brewing, it is loud, and I love it. And it exists just as much in the tiny stuff, in the micro rebellions, as it does in public protest and in very visible spaces. And I look at these movements for social justice in the Swana region and around the world, and who is leading them? Young women. Young women. Wow, I get chills, right? I watch them challenge all of those social norms and defy patriarchies and controls and create new feminist spaces and redefine what it means to do social justice work. And that feminism, I love it because it is angry, it's urgent, it's necessary, it's now, and the persistence is in the resistance. For me, this is what keeps me happy at night. I remember in one of the talks that I did, a young woman who asked me if I thought that feminism could ever be a matter of fact and not a matter of fight. Loved that. And I said, yes, it will be fact, but also, yes, we have to prepare for the fight. That fight now is harder than ever. We know it and we feel it and we're living it and we're on these front lines ourselves every single day. Another young feminist, a Lebanese feminist named Lina AbiRafeh, said, the Arab world demands a reassessment of what feminist revolutions can do. And she and so many women like her of that generation were effectively calling for a feminist intifada, an uprising. I love that. And that's not new. This is not like a cute little development, whatever. This is not, Arab Spring or whatever. We have been doing this since the beginning of time. We have been resisting since the beginning of time. A famous Somali feminist, her name is Hibak Osman, wrote an article for The Guardian recently, a few months ago. And that was in response to American feminists all kind of panicking about the rollback of their reproductive rights. And so she called for revolution for women in the US. She said, sisters, we see you, your rights, your bodies, your autonomy, it's under attack. And she said, let us, your sisters from the Arab world, offer you some advice. And she said, we know the power of female solidarity. And we know the power of resistance. So her message was this. If you look at our region, you will see it. Resistance works. So don't give up, because there is a lot we can learn from our feminisms, these feminists, all feminists, from each other. There is a lot we can learn, and that is why Feminist Firestarters, that is why. But here we are, day after decade, right? Charged with the burden of fighting for our own freedoms. I don't think we do anything other than this. I look at my life, I do an audit of my life. Where are my hobbies? What other things could I do? What would I do if we'd achieved equality? How would I fill my time? This is exactly what we do all the time, every single day. I have absolutely no idea what else to do. But I wish I didn't have to do it. The thing is, something is going on and something is going wrong. All right, and I want to now look at some of these points of, there's so many things, right? But for me, there are some critical points of interface. These are breaking points. And I call them breaking points because they are also points of major opportunity. If we act on them, if we rectify, if we remedy, we can survive. But if we allow them to break us, they will. They will. So this is our existential stuff. I'm going to try and break it down. Granted, there's a lot of them, so here we go. I constantly complain that we don't communicate well enough. We hide behind our technical jargon and our buzzwords and our terms that are often obscure, elitist, and English-based, right? And we do not reach people where they are. We miss that fundamental opportunity to communicate in ways that people understand. We're great at talking to each other in these spaces. Wonderful, bravo. But that's not who we need to speak to. We need to reach what I call the movable middle, not the opposition on the one side, not the converted in this room. Thank you, all of you. But the people in the middle who are on the fence and who need to understand what's going on, maybe they do, maybe they don't know how to act, maybe they don't like what they see, maybe they have absolutely no idea. Whatever they are, whatever perspective they bring, we need to meet them where they are and communicate in ways that actually make sense to them rather than the ones that make sense to us. Because the way we convey information, we lose people. We lose people we cannot afford to lose. I often criticize organizations that I'm a part of too for slapping their long PDF report on the website and saying, there we go, we shared information. I do not think that is the best way to share information. I do not read those PDFs. I don't know if anyone else does. Good for you. But for me, the days of speaking in acronyms and buzzwords and technical language, that is not a language. And those days are done for me. No more. No more. Because we cannot continue to claim to leave no one behind, as we like to say, one of our mantras, but we're leaving people behind, right? Because we don't know how to explain what it is that we do in 1 minute to a group of people who have no idea, a group of young girls, a group of religious elders, the media, the government, whatever, even in our own organizations where we have to fight for space. And we are sidelined, and we are unfunded and underfunded, and opposition exists actively within the organizations that look at all things gender, all things women like a tick box, and they roll their eyes, and here comes the feminist. And I know people have rolled their eyes for me in just about every place I've ever been. But no more. We can do better to communicate our work in ways that resonate rather than ways that restrict. What about another one I love? Top-down implementation, one-size-fits-all models. We still do this. It's like the 1980s sometimes, where we design these programs without any meaningful participation from local women, from young people, from marginalized groups, from all of those who are implicated in the realities. Meaning, we're ignoring feminist realities. And we allow that to happen far too often. We allow gender programs to be designed, donor-driven, whatever, in places where they are not connected at all with the reality on the ground. And they miss urgent issues in doing so. And at the same time, we say localization. I love that. That's a great little buzzword we've coined recently. Localization, but who's felt sufficiently localized? When I was the local partner, I didn't feel very localized. I felt very tokenized. So, do we localize? I don't think so. So no more of that. That's out too. Elitist feminism, right? In some regions, that's definitely something that we see more often than not. Empowering some of the elite women and marginalizing the already marginalized, the majority, actually. How many times have we seen women's conferences in a region where they are armed with English-speaking experts, so to speak, or CSW, great example of CSW, right? Where passport privilege gives you access, and it's the same talking heads all the time, and the local partner speaks last, No more of that. No more Western-centric narratives, no more seeing things through a Western lens. Now we're going to be switching sides here and seeing things through our lens, our framework, our definitions, our vocabulary, our worldview, our activism, and the ways that we define ourselves, our own contexts. So the other way, that other lens, for me, no more. No more depoliticization of feminism. You cannot reduce this stuff to technical work. How can you? How can you strip what we do of its political power and its revolutionary fire? You cannot. You cannot water this down. You can. And I know that there are M&E people probably, or people with little M&E hearts who want very much to count the number of women trained and count things that are countable, and it makes everybody feel good to do that. But that is not what counts to me. That does not give you any sense of patriarchy, power, political systems that are keeping women oppressed. How are we dismantling those? How are we transforming those spaces? No more. Crisis tunnel vision, where the aid that we receive focuses too much on the short-term survival rather than the long-term stuff that is gender justice, transformative, structural, etc. We cannot anymore because there never have been short-term solutions to long-term structural problems. Never worked, it will never work. That we cannot accept, no more. Similarly, donor-driven agendas. I think all of this is kind of defying all of that as much as we possibly can, because we cannot accept other people to tell us what counts as progress, because that just does not gel with us. And how often have we been told by funders, I certainly have, to reprioritize and do this work instead of this because it is fundable. Doesn't matter if it's relevant, it's fundable. As donors shrink, as space shrinks, this is going to get harder, this is not going to be fun for us. But I still say no more. No more. And no more invisibility of our resistance. No more overlooking of everyday feminist resistance that exists in spaces that might not fit the formal, the visible, the countable, the measurable, the metrics of aid systems that have restricted us. No more. Gaza is a great example where women are cooking meals for families, organizing aid, shielding children from airstrikes. That is activism, and that counts. And these are daily acts that are vital for feminist resistance, and they count. So discounting those, also, my friends, no more. No more. Exclusion of key voices, right? Where are the young feminists? I want more. I want them louder. Where are LGBT people? Where are grassroots activists? Why are they sidelined? Why are they tokenized? Why is women's inclusion still symbolic, a nice to have and not a must have? Why is it seen in numbers and not in influence? Why is it failing to shift real power? What year are we? Again, what year are we? I cannot believe it. Again, 30 years, and I could have given you the same speech 30 years ago, truly. And then, here we are, we're always fighting for a seat at the table. God, I hate that expression so much. Which table? Whose table? Who's at the table? What kind of seat are we getting? Does a seat at the table bring power and bring influence? I mean, you got a seat, but will you be allowed to speak? Probably not. You get one seat at the big boys' table. Well, that's cool. That's very nice. But it's not enough to be invited into a broken system. Not anymore. One chair of inclusion will not fix an entire banquet of exclusion. It will not. Because look around this table. Who is there? Who isn't there? Right? Who is not at this table? And what could we have gained with their presence? And what do we lose by their absence? Right? Who isn't at this overused table? No more table. Time to deconstruct that. And then we say, let's give voice to the voiceless. Right? No. Also no, because people don't need us to give them a voice. They need us to stop talking over them instead. The problem is that too many people are unheard, they are silenced, they are ignored. No more of that. I mean, who is voiceless? No one. We're just not listening, right? Everyone has a voice, but not everyone has a microphone. And if you have one, how are you using it and how are you sharing it? We need to ask ourselves that. And our microphone has always been frontline feminists. But we actually, are being muted. The traditional models are failing. I mean, the US is a great example of this, right? A primary military orchestrator and a main humanitarian donor at the same time. How you hold those two, I don't understand. With USAID dismantled, UN reform, right, whatever that is, funding shortfalls, total catastrophe, and the US veto hand at the Security Council that keeps going up, undermining the effectiveness of the Security Council and effectively the security of the whole world. Right? I do not understand how this is acceptable, but what it is showing us and what we cannot unsee now is that the lives and the futures of us, the global majority, are only valued when they serve strategic interests of powerful nations. It's a system that's built to keep money and power in the hands of very few, right? 5 seats, no, can't handle this. No more of that. I mean, our work has always been underfunded and exploited anyway, but now, with life-saving aid that is erased, women's programming is the first to go. Right? And the message is our lives are expendable. They are, and our rights are secondary to political and economic interests. And sure, I mean, we should be enraged. I am fuming, I am furious. But what's messed up is I'm not surprised. Not surprised, because aid has always been repackaged colonialism, right? And colonialism is control. Not just land, but our bodies, our minds, our cultures, our lives, our futures. And the gritty work of deconstructing, decolonizing, that means reflecting on the history of these institutions. How are they centering Indigenous and marginalized voices? How are they flattening their governance structures, reducing top-down decisions, centering expertise of the global majority? How are they really doing that? How can they do as little harm as possible? I mean, do no harm as another mandate is really just the lowest bar that we can possibly imagine. Like, just don't do any harm, do something but don't make it worse, is a terrible standard to measure. When we talk about decolonizing, it's not a tick box thing, yes, no. It is a process and a permanent state and a constant reflection and an introspection, and the need that we all have to move beyond performative allyship towards transformative solidarity, because that is what feminism requires of us. So donors actually need to fully resource and support women-focused groups, women-led groups, frontline coalitions, feminist movements, all of that. pooled grants that are run by feminist coalitions themselves. Let us decide where the money goes, please. And when you give us money, let it be long-term and unrestricted, so we have full power and control over the use of that money. Why do we have to say that? Why? At the same time, we must be ready as feminist movements, right? Reducing our dependence on this aid, on conditional, politically volatile aid. Again, we are not a light switch. I don't accept that my rights are flicked on and off. And we need to find a way, not easy, but find a way to develop sustainable, self-sufficient funding, grassroots funding, local partnerships, women-centered enterprises, whatever it's going to take, because puppeteers, are continuing to pull our strings. And we need to turn around and remind them that, thank you very much, we need solidarity and not saviorism. And their bombing does not bring liberation, no matter how often they use women's rights as an excuse. That has never worked. It will never work. We do not accept it, not now, not ever, no more. We have agency. We know what we want. We know the fronts on which we fight. And we expect now that the powers step up and fight alongside us or step aside. I believe in taking action, obviously. And that is why, Feminist Firestarter for me is more than just a call to action. It's also what you get when you sign up for my newsletter. It's also the title of my next book. Stay tuned. It is so many things. It is also what it means to do more than just push back. I want us to think about this term that we use, pushing back, because it's reactive, and too often we are reactive. And what we need to do is also think of this mentality of, yes, pushing back because we have to survive, and we're not going to accept that our rights are rolled back, but push forward proactively. Pushing back and pushing forward at the same time, and fighting on many fronts against the patriarchy, against corporations, against politicians, protesting loudly and quietly, where purity should not override practice and practicality. I will say again, infiltrate anywhere, in any space, in any way that you can, as quietly and as loudly as you can. Now is not the time to fully turn things off, but it might be a time to adjust and course correct. Because democracy has gone a little dark, then a little dim, but it's not dead yet. It's not dead. And I want us to think about the right for a second. Think about the other side, our friends on the other side. They do something right. And that is they speak with one voice. It is a clear and simple message, even if it's the absolute lowest common denominator, right? They pick the one thing they agree on and they promote that, and they do not let the divisions divide them. And that is where we must be, because our revolutions are going to fragment and fall apart and fracture if we fight amongst ourselves the way that we do. I'm not saying abandon your principles, and don't deny diversity, but find what unites us and fight on that front, because if we don't, we will lose, and look at how much we've lost already. Yes, this all comes with a price, and the revolution brings great risks, and I want to talk about how we cannot compromise on some of these principles, or at least, we need to decide to what extent we value our integrity and how we're willing to defend it. We're making these choices every day that are very difficult, that have an impact on our lives and our realities. I can go on about self-care and protecting your space and the importance of community and all of the things that you already know, and I hope you remember and believe. What I want to conclude with is this. What our feminism reminds me every day, that a better world for women is a better world for everyone. I have no doubt about that. None of us need permission to do what we do, and we have to do it anywhere, in any space. I often use the mantra, start where you stand, which I found in Nepal when I was working there after the earthquake. It was graffiti that was painted on the street. Start where you stand, it said. And for me, it's a great philosophy because it reminds me to resist apathy, even in the face of great hopelessness that we now have, and to get moving. Tiny steps even are better than nothing, because small steps are still steps. So we cannot quit at this time, but we can refocus, we can reorient, we can go local, right? Maybe our global ambitions are not to be fulfilled right now, but we can disrupt quietly. We can do it still, because better small than not at all. We're in a values vacuum right now, and we're in a visionary vacuum. And we need to step in and fill that. We need to rectify that, because what that means is we're not aligned to our fundamental human values. and that we lack the vision to bring the better world that we need to life. So when I say push back, push forward, what I mean by that is, yes, continue to protest against all the stuff that we don't want in the world that we don't want, but protest for the world that we want to build. So creatively imagine our lives so that we have clarity on the future that we're fighting for. What are we fighting for? Enough reacting. Imagine a future where we are all equal. I mean, our world is changing so much right now and changing in ways that we don't like. But we have to become feminist infiltrators. We have to permeate all of these spaces. And I want us to remember that we have power in ways that we don't realize. And there is power right here in this room. And I want us to ask ourselves, how will we use this power? Because we can't control the crises, can't control our governments, can't control other people, but we can control how we show up in the world every single day and what choices we make every single day. That and a million more reasons is why I am, you are, and we are feminist fire starters, because the world needs our fire right now more than ever. Thank you. Now I sit?
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
I
Very
forgot
well.
my water.
Yeah, please. Yeah, very warm thank you to you, Lina, for this inspiring and challenging, motivating, and sometimes depressing talk. Really, I don't know where to start in terms of all the ideas that are floating in my mind right now. I really like this idea, and we talked about it also earlier this week, about feminist infiltrators. So that's one that keeps coming up in my mind. Yeah, as you're speaking. And this idea of a values vacuum and a vision vacuum, I think this is something that we're also thinking a lot about amongst our colleagues at the moment as well. So this is very real, I think, for many of us. I want to now just we're going to take a few moments to hear from two of our participants this year from Feminist Edge. We're really pleased that we had actually 4 participants this year who benefited from the Dutch government's MENA scholarship program, which obviously should be called the SWANA scholarship program. But they've kindly agreed to act as commentators for this evening. So we're going to hear from Norhan and Worhoud Albtoush before we open up the floor to others. And while I'm introducing you, maybe Norhan, you can start to make your way up. So Norhan is an Egyptian physician and an advocate for access to sexual health information and services for younger people. And as the project manager of Love Matters Arabic, she's driving change in global health leadership and youth empowerment. So I give the floor to you for a few minutes, Norhan.
Not sure what should I do after all of this. So hi everyone. I don't know if you are familiar with, we used to, when anyone become in TV, they say hi mom. So I'm saying hi to my colleague online. Thank you for support. Thank you for being here. I guess I will be moving more personal and with the intersection of all what Lina was saying. I guess there is a moment of my life that shaped who I am. I guess the first one with the Intifada, when we saw the picture of Ahmed al-Durra. I guess I was 11 and I was very angry, and I was in private school, very cute school in middle class in Egypt. They allowed us to protest around the school because we were so angry. It was like they kept us moving around it. And then I guess as an Egyptian, when the Egyptian revolution happened, 2011, I was 22. So there is a moment that shaped who I am and shaped how I think. And it kind of, for me, feels funny sometimes when we see the white panic about what's happening. I have been participating in multiple events from CSW to this training. I was recently in an African conference about business foundation for the majority of the world, and the naming was the majority of the world, not the global south. And the conversation that we have to speak a lot about US and what's happening and Trump degree, and I have zero care about what's happening in US, to be honest. And I don't have also the whole conversation about how this means to feminism and how feminism is shrinking and how the movement is affecting, I guess at this panic we need to move from it, and we need to be aware that we are not affecting with it. It's not that we are saying that this is wrong or right, but we are saying that we don't have to be in this circle of panic and this movement of panic that feels sometimes paralyzing. You feel like you don't have anything to do with it because it's bigger than you, and we have been experiencing it all the time. I'm coming from youth movement. I started working in those movements since 15. I participated in international youth alliances. I worked in sexual and reproductive health. I work in sexual pleasure in the MENA region or Swana region, Arab world, Africa. And I guess this identity politic that we are having right now, there is a lot of healing need to be done around it. The feeling that we need to promote one identity and one topic that is important, from regional to also topic. Sometimes as an Egyptian, I belong to the African continent, and my African colleague knows very well the racism and the healing that we need to do, because Africa is a fastest growing economy. If we are going to speak about South-to-South collaboration and the funding, then we need to be talking to each other, and this is not happening. And I guess this is also kind of move us from the mentality of, we losing fund. Are we losing fund, or are we having more space and more time to think about how we can organize? Because I feel like I feel like I am tired. I'm tired that they are telling me what to do. And I know everyone who worked with me, I'm funded by the Dutch government, and they know very well that I don't give a shit. No one, sorry. Don't give a shit, even the table hated. So I don't comply whatever they tell me that I need to do whatever or focus about certain topic. I bring my topic, and I think this act of resistance is an act of resistance. We need to keep moving from this binary of like, if you didn't do 1, 2, 3, you are not fitting or you're not getting fund, and you feel like it's a reward to get fund. I was like, no. You are getting access through me. So I dictate what kind of agenda that I want to do. So I think any project that I worked in, any organization that I worked in, I push back, and I push back very hard, and it takes a lot of energy. But also it's really important not to try to fit in the boxes that they trying to sell you, and at the same point at the same time you feel like, because this is impact it is, or what is success it is, or what is influence need to be done. So I think also I tried a lot not to be frustrating to this speech and moving to areas of hope and areas of opportunity. And I think a lot about movement in Egypt and the right to vote or right to get education in the school. And I don't think that they have a funding, they didn't have an M&D officer, they didn't have a project management. So also social movement and the way that young people organized themselves in 2011, it didn't have to have a structure, it didn't have to have funding. So I guess sometimes we need to step out of this and see what potential that we can have. And I agree about reclaiming the narrative, but also I think that's something that has been systematically, we ignore younger generation, younger than me even, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, and we assume that they are TikToker, they are shallow people, they did this whole narrative about their ideology, and I think they are political, they have ideology, but we never examine their ideology. And I guess also because a lot of young generation and a lot of Gen Z have been voting this year and next year, and we don't know anything. And then if we are speaking about anti-riot movement, they are recruiting them. They are recruiting them, they are infiltrating their spaces, and they are feeding them with ideology, and we are not doing anything. So I think also this kind of opportunity that I see, it's an opportunity to power shift also, but also create new systems and new structure that fit us and fit our definition of resistance and success. Sorry, I tried to fit many points. I also, Great. Sorry for the table hit.
Great. Thank you. I think it's table's an easy fix, so that's no problem. So next, I want to invite Worhoud to come up. Worhoud Albtoush. She's a feminist researcher in Gender and Sexual and Reproductive Health and Rights at the Higher Population Council and for ShareNet Jordan Hub. ShareNet, of course, is something we know well at KIT, and we're really proud to have a ShareNet colleague with us today. She's currently a PhD candidate in philosophy and a committed human rights activist. So the floor is yours, yeah.
Hi everyone, it's really good to be here. And after Lina's and Nora's words, I'm a bit lost. But I think I'll start with Edward Said's that identity is often shaped by the opposition. And I know that might not exactly resonate to what a backlash means. It's more about asking about ourselves when we see what is the other. But here I want to interpret it in a different way. I want to think of it as the backlash. I want to look at this backlash as something that is good, because backlash at the same time means that we are creating the change. If we're not provoking anyone, then why we're doing what we're doing? And at the same time, I also think of it as something that starts the whole mission, because without that opinion in the first place, why is there feminism? Why do we feel that like to be here in the first place? And I want to speak about the women in the Jordanian context. I wouldn't think of the backlash of only compared to the patriarchal, but also as a colonial backlash, because Arabian woman is not only a woman, it's a woman from like double class. The first class is that she's a woman, and the second one is that she is an Arab. And empowering her in the first place means power for what was called the East, which is not in the favor of many parties as well. So I don't want to look at backlash from one aspect, never. And I just want to thank Kat, and you mentioned ShareNet. ShareNet is really near to me, and it's really like somewhere where I discovered part of myself. It belongs to KIT, and we're ending that in June, unfortunately. And I can say that my journey with the sexual reproductive health and I've been always a feminist, but that was also a part of my journey. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Lina, for your words and for the bit of depression that we've been. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Great. Well, thank you both for your reactions and your contributions. It's really great to hear from participants directly as they react to your talk, Lina. To kick off the discussion, maybe you want to react first to the commentators.
I would love to. First of all, to say that it's a pleasure and a privilege to be among powerhouses. So thank you both. And you saw me taking notes, meaning there was a lot of richness. You gave us some good nuggets. So I want to just recap. I mean, there's nothing that I disagree with, obviously. I just want to sink into some of the beautiful nuggets that you gave us. First of all, breaking the cycle of panic that's paralyzing. I love that. I think that's beautiful. The other thing, and this one was so good, I wanted to clap and stand on the chair. I wanted to break the table, seat at the table, break the damn table. Good for you. We have the resources we need amongst ourselves. Right? We have them. We are not using them. And those aren't just financial, but I think they're intellectual resources as well. I'm adding on to what you said here, right? The in-house capacities that we have, right, are going to break the dependencies that we have that have held us hostage for too long, that are dangerous and debilitating. I'm tired of them. We're all tired of them, right? So time to look inward, in-house, and build those kinds of systems of solidarity and support that are going to serve us on our own terms and from our own families, communities, and people, which presents an opportunity, I think, to shift power, as you said, and redefine what is resistance. I loved, yes, Edward Said. God, what would he say about today? You know, what would this man say from the grave? I don't want to know. I follow his daughter online, and she has I feel like she's the mouthpiece of her dad, but God help us all for that. Anyway, identities shaped by the opposition, I think, is very powerful in many ways because it's true that our identities become politicized when they're confronted in those ways by people who are on the outside. I saw that shift happen so often in Afghanistan, where identities were politicized to be played with, and that's an important distinction because we also now need to reclaim how we define ourselves and protect those and insist on those. And I love this idea of reframing the backlash because, yeah, we use it as a negative, but you really made me think, it means we're poking and provoking the patriarchy. It means that we're pissing the right people off. Right? If there was no backlash, then that means it's the status quo. That means they're happy with us, and they're not supposed to be happy with us. Like that's not our job. That is progress. The fact that we've poked and woken the sleeping bear is a wonderful thing, because that means we are doing something right. And when we take, not to be hopeless. And I had like 6 more pages of notes. I'll have you know. Like that was just the start of what I wanted to say.
You saw me shuffling on my seat.
I did so much. And what's funny is that I meant to set the timer, but I dove right in, started talking, forgot the damn timer, brought the phone for nothing, and then just went on and on and on. And, like I said, there was a lot. I left out all the good stuff. What I want to say is, if you take the long view, right? I mean, the problem is that we're so much in the day-to-day and the setbacks that we're experiencing in every moment and the minutia. But if we take the long view and zoom out, get to like 30,000 feet or whatever, like the progress is there, the movement is there. It hurts because it's so damn slow, and I'm not known for my patience at all. And this, 130 years, 150 years or whatever it is, like... what the hell? But, at the same time, we are moving, right? And the backlash is a good thing. And I think if we think of it that way, then we can feel vindicated and satisfied and know that at least like we've pushed some boundaries, and let's hope that we are leaving things a little bit better than when we found them is the best that we can do.
Great, thanks, Lina, for getting us started there. I want to open up right away for people in the room and people online as well. And I see Moitri's hand is up just right even before I can finish my sentence. So great. We have 2 people, let me just say, in the room. So we've got Priscilla and we have Emily who have microphones. So if you want to speak, raise your hand and we can get the microphone to you. For those online, we will come to you in just a few minutes. Put your questions, comments in the chat, and Miriam's working hard to keep track of that, and we'll come to her in a few minutes. Moitri, tell me.
Yeah. Lina, very nice to meet you again after 15 years.
Likewise. Our feminist world is a small one.
It's very small. Thank you very much for your discourse. Let me just say that I was waiting with bated breath if you would mention the disaster of disasters that we are facing now, which is Gaza. So I'm going to ask you to please lead us in a 1-moment silence to commemorate, to empathize with, to show our solidarity with Gaza.
Thank you for that suggestion, actually.
Shall we do it now?
I think, yes, if someone wants to time it, I think
I will.
That's a great idea as a show of solidarity. I want to say, before we start that, I want to say, it's interesting, like I'm part of so many groups discussing Palestine, and we've got to remember it's not just Gaza, right? It's also the West Bank and settler violence and so many things that are happening that are, like I said, the crime of our time and how we will be judged. And what I find is that, people talk of like erecting a monument or doing a petition or doing a thing that, and I think, no, I mean, we are seeing this already as lost, and we cannot do that. This is an extremely painful moment for all of us who care about social justice and freedom and people who've been oppressed for far too long. But we cannot believe that. We owe it to them as we sit here in a beautiful hall to believe that there is still hope. So, in our moment of silence, let it not just be sorrow, but also, be in some power and positivity that we need to send to them in whatever ways we can, and to brace ourselves for the support they are going to need that we all owe to them.
Thanks very much, Moitri. Thank you. Not easy to speak after a moment of silence, but I do want to open up the floor. Good, somebody's courageous there. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think were many points that you mentioned, but what that come to my mind that I have been struggling since the last 2 years, sending our message in a way that resonates is something that is hard to do it, especially with your own family members and that thinking the opposite way. As a gender trainer, for example, it's easier to convince others or like to create this awareness together, because I feel like even if a participant is the first time hearing about gender and like in a more, how you say, structure or like, I don't know, like using the different terminologies that we build together is easier, but when you have your own family members going in the opposite direction and like being also pushed to the backlash is something that when she was saying like perceiving the backlash as a something positive is for me is hard because it indicates that I am not doing the right things even with my own family. So how you deal with that, or if you have faced it, like even people that it matters to you, share blood with you, and share the struggles with you, but they went the opposite side, how we can send a message that resonates even with on our blood or on people. Yeah, that's something.
Shall we collect a few points first and then have you react? Is that okay, Lina? Or
Whatever's, or maybe should I just do shorter responses, and that way I get more people. Okay, it's a great question. It's a hard question, and I think the more technical we get, the more specialized we get, the more tangled we get. I don't think that's a good thing anymore. I think we are so deeply seeped in our own language and terminology, we no longer how to extract ourselves from it. And again, and I say this tongue in cheek, so you can all like get your rotten tomatoes and get ready to throw them. But look at messaging, for example, coming from across the pond, from the orange. Make America great again. Who's going to disagree with that? It's kind of genius, right? Make America great again. There's a lot of people who are like, yeah, okay, I get that. I'll get behind that. That's cool. Sure, I'll do that. How? Doesn't matter. Forget the details. No, we don't need to know. We can fight about the details privately. But the point is, like, we don't have effective, simple, clear messaging that is going to reach people where they are. And that's almost something that if you've got 2 more days together, that's what I would do. Rather than like drown in the technicalities of it, is zoom out completely. A word like gender. Don't use. All the words that, empowerment, don't use. Like, think really about what you're trying to say to the hardest possible opponent, and what kind of world you would like, and just use those very basic words, and maybe you can you can sway people on that and deal with the details later. Is what I would get people on your side with something very simple, and then crumb by crumb, right? Is how I would approach it. Yeah. But I think you've got a lot of capacity in this room. And please, if you talk about it tomorrow, somebody call me and let me know exactly what you said.
Well, families are often the most difficult, huh?
That actually
on many
is,
topics,
yeah, that's very true. Very true. A lot of us face
there
that.
was a hand in, there's one here, and then we'll come back, yeah.
Hi, thank you. My name is Serena Cruz, and I came and I invited my 9-year-old daughter, Berwin, because
thanks for coming.
we got to start them young. So I identify as a Puerto Rican. I'm a Puerto Rican, and Puerto Rico, unfortunately, is a colony of the United States. And so I do think it's important to, like, I loved that graffitied knowledge that you shared, where you start where you stand. So that's my starting point. I'm very much involved in different initiatives to help coordinate and support different humanitarian causes inside Gaza. And often I get asked, what's a Puerto Rican feminist, doing? But I really understand your point. What I was kind of hoping to hear, but we were late, so you might have already said it. So excuse me if we missed it. But what I was still looking or longing to hear was the cost of doing this. I don't just mean, obviously there's a personal cost to activism. And this is the difference between social movements like what happened in Egypt and the communities that pay, I'll give you cash here, I'll make you bread here. There's that cost. But really the financial costs associated with annihilating the world. And what comes to mind is Albanese's report and the companies that are profiting from this annihilation. So I wanted to ask you about the feminist response to that financial annihilation that we're experiencing. It's kind of a hard question, but I'd love just for you to just think about it out loud, please.
Sure. I mean, I think, when you present things in ways that are numbers, it makes it very real, and that data is undeniable. And I think that's a very compelling way to argue. And one thing, you're right, that I skipped over in my like 10 other pages for later, for part 2 of the talk, if you stick around, is, when you said costs, like my mind went to something else, like our personal costs and our own personal financial, what it costs, what is the price of our principles, right? The revolution that brings the risks to us, like, and there are costs there too, and that's another interesting part of the discussion. But in terms of movements like the boycott, divestment, sanctions for Palestine, right? BDS is very compelling, and that is what effectively dismantled apartheid in South Africa, right? And that is where Palestinians got that idea from, and that is about making it economic, and voting with your dollars or whatever. But there's a better expression than that, and I think that is hitting where it hurts, and so. If you ask for the feminist response to that, I say, if you're using dollars, great. If you're using people's stories and anecdotes, great. If you're using, it depends on who you're convincing. But as I said, dollars make a very compelling and undeniable story. And whether that's, suitably feminist or not, in the end, like, you want to convince people and you want to call people out. And if that's the best way to do it, then do it. I mean, and frankly, everything that comes out of Albanese's voice and views and words, I applaud and endorse. Long may she reign, because she's been an absolute superhero and saint for this cause. And I think she's coming at it from so many different angles to reach people where their eyes will open and where they can no longer deny. If we talk about numbers, look at how many times we share the numbers of people who've been murdered and maimed and children killed. And none of those numbers have been compelling enough. Dollars, people have paid attention, right? And so what does that say about our world and our values? Pretty shitty, frankly. But, right now, whatever it takes. I am no longer a purist. I am about, action in whatever forms, and that is a great form. So that is my feminist response to that.
Yeah. There was a hand over here, right? Yeah.
Yeah. More. I'll go. Am I going fast enough with answers?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I want all the questions. Thinking in this comfy sofa. Yeah.
Thank you, Lina. Actually, it was amazing space what you gave, and it is very insightful, inspirational. But particularly when you said that being feminist, actually we still don't know how to communicate what actually we are doing. But specifically, I am thinking of in the context of women, and we all know that feminist movement are also fragmented due to a lot of intersectionality, class, and being the privileged women we are. But how could feminists and feminism will reshape their strategy to reach out the women, millions of women who are still every day in their life with poverty, gender-based violence, even the women in their entire life who could not reach out to the polling center, but we are working on the political participation, women, and a lot of things. So how could we rethink our strategy as feminists? Thank you.
I think that is the challenge that we face, that we have to meet people where they are and make it very personal to them and relevant. And if that means, reducing our lofty goals and our technical language, our sophisticated terms, into something that's very simple that can meet women's immediate needs and make it feel like you are speaking directly to them. I think that is going to be very, it's very simple. It's also going to be very contextual because it has to be relevant. right? And that's one thing that, look at how what the difficulties we face in all of the ways that we communicate and all the things that we produce. SDGs are a great example. Like how often we sit and do let's do a training on SDGs. Who cares? You know what I mean? We're not even going to meet them. It's not even working. Are we going to sit and explain to people? It's a cute acronym. The logo is amazing. Bravo, right? WPS, beautiful example, right? Another crappy acronym and an agenda that is irrelevant when you distill it down. It is about people's lives and their realities and their day-to-day existence that you want to make better. They want to make better, right? And you want to help them to do that. So what I've done in some cases is approach people by asking, what do you need? What is going to make your life better today? What is a very simple thing? What is one change? What is one thing we can do? How can I help you to achieve that thing? I used to spend a lot of time speaking to women, obviously working on sexual violence. I would come at it from that angle, but not asking about that ever. I would ask women that I met in camps or whoever, or whatever setting, do you feel safe? And I know that the answer is no. All right, no. And I would say, well, what will it take? What's it going to take to make you feel safe? What can I do? What would you like that's going to make you feel safe right now? That's it. That's what I did. And if it was in my power to deliver it, damn, I tried. And I would go back to all the powers and all the whatever and the interagency thing and the cluster I don't know what and the donors I don't know what and the funds of whatever and say they said this, they said lights, they said toilets, they said whatever. And I think those are the things where we need to start. That's how I would approach that.
Thank you, Lina. I really liked everything, but what I picked today that resonated with me is about pushback and push forward. And pushback usually is historical, you're being on the defensive, but push forward is looking at what you say, the numbers, the dollars. What would success look like for my community, for my country, for now, in the next 5 years? It also brings complexities, and it's very hard, but visualizing that and detailing it, and it's not easy, so it just brings complexity to what we are doing, because in other areas there's more certainty. Maybe if you're doing engineering, this is success here, you can pick numbers. So I loved it, and it brings hope. You visualize, you look at what success would look like, even just helping one child, one woman. So I really like that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's interesting. There was this campaign, or maybe it came out of some UN agency, or it might have been the Secretary General himself. So sorry, Guterres, who said something like, "We have to push back against the pushback." And I was like, "Well, that's dumb, because that puts us exactly where we are, and where we are is not good enough. Push back against the pushback. You're right where you were before. That's the status quo, and the status quo is crap. That's not what I want." I want us to actually creatively imagine where we want to be, not constantly react and respond. And, in the end, that we're going to be exactly where we were. And for me, this is not a good place to be. I want much better than that. My expectations are much higher. Even if I'll be long dead, I tell people so often, dig me from the grave, except for I want to be cremated, so it's weird, it's not. Open my urn, and tell me how we're doing, and I want the updates, because it doesn't matter if we're not going to see this in my lifetime in the way that I imagine it, but it will materialize, and my ashes will rejoice.
Great. Is there another point in the room before we go to those online? Please go ahead. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mirela from Albania. I'm a part of the group of Feminist Edge program. And my question, you speak a lot for feminist elite. You speak feminist elite is first class. We have first class, second class, third class. And we have a lot division among us. How we can, what we can do together don't have this division among us.
I think there's it's not only class, it's so many things that actually divide us as feminists. And we're allowing all of those divisions and the details to fragment us. And unless we start to think like the right, sorry, and look at the ways that they find a very simple thing to agree on, And then, you know, like I said, details, divisions later, but fight on one united front for one thing that we can all agree on, you know, our desire to improve our own lives and circumstances in whatever ways, you know, the equivalent, the feminist equivalent, forgive me, of Make America Great. What is our feminist call to action that sounds as compelling as that, right? Because there are lessons we can learn from the opposition, right, in the way that they approach it. And why are they gaining ground and we're losing ground, right? It's because we're like, class, religion, this value, this whatever, you're a brown feminist, I'm a this color feminist, you're this and you're that, and then, and that's it. We're shooting ourselves in the foot. We want to win the race, but we're tying our ankles, you know, and it no longer makes any sense to me to continue to fight amongst ourselves. Like I never understood that, and I certainly don't now. And especially now when we're paralyzed and watching, you know, the other side devour us, right? So I think it's, again, you know, if you've got 48 hours together, I would strategically use that to find a more compelling way to communicate what one value we share, what one goal we have, what one commonality we have, even if it's something that's frustratingly simple. This doesn't deny or negate the divisions and the diversities and the disagreements. No, but do we have to broadcast those all the time? You know, maybe we do not. Maybe this is a different way of approaching it. Because yes, there is so much richness and beauty in our diversity, and I certainly love it. And, you know, and I keep saying, I'm a brown feminist, I'm a feminist of color, I'm this, I'm that. Okay, but like I say that amongst us, whatever, but when we face the outside, we need to face the outside a little bit differently. And that's what I wish for us. Again, and when you find that line, call me.
That's something to think about the next few days.
Right? If I was here 2 more days, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. If I was here 2 more days, I would, you know, roll up my sleeves with you, believe me, and like, and cook up something that is compelling enough and makes sense and is going to convince people. You know, first of all, bring us all back on board together with something that we can unite around, and then present that front to the outside.
Great. I want to take a couple of minutes to go to Miriam to see online if we have some reactions or comments that you've clustered that we can, maybe if you say a few things and then Lina can respond. Yeah.
So we have several questions online.
Oh, good.
A little louder, I think we need.
Okay, yeah, so we have several questions online. And one of our participants is asking the following. In light of the growing backlash online, particularly movements like the Red Pill, which frame feminism as a threat and influence young people who are undecided on gender issues or in the middle, how can feminist solidarities respond effectively to such digital backlash without amplifying extremist voices or alienating those who are questioning gender norms?
I'm recently learning about all that anti-feminist whatever and the red pill, and I mean, yes, we talked about the rise of toxic masculinity and those, you know, the like Andrew Tateization of, you know, these online spaces that are repulsive. You know, maybe that's something that we can all agree on, right? Our own safety and our bodily autonomy, you know, then gets us into some other minefield. But, you know, there's some other way. First of all, I mean, there's a responsibility, I think, with all the big tech, right, to censor or to police, or I don't know how they're going to do it, all of these, you know, spaces that are toxic and violent and dangerous. And that online harassment doesn't just stay online. We know that, right? And it's becoming more and more dangerous. And the more that we evolve, you know, with our ways of communicating, the more we find ways to be in harm's way, unfortunately. And I think that's one of our big, how to stop those kinds of movements. I don't think I have a particularly good answer, except that, you know, I would probably say this. I would say that we're missing communicating to younger people, really young people, right? I mean, who's supporting all those movements? What's Andrew Tate's like fan base is 12-year-olds or something crazy like that, right? I mean, think about what that means and who we've lost. Like, I don't know if anybody saw that show from the UK, Adolescence or whatever. I was traumatized by that. Like, I sat and watched that, like, my God, you know, this has blown my mind. But what does that mean? You know, we've neglected, like, we've missed an opportunity to, you know, we've left young people to interpret things in ways that they want that are very dangerous. And yes, they're subjected to so many influences online that it's almost impossible for us to control. You know, for anyone who's a parent, I'm not, but you know, how you manage that and how you keep your kids free and safe from those kinds of things is a minefield. But you know, it really is about reaching people when they're very, very young, because that's what the other side is doing, right? Capturing these young boys who then become men who are, well, Andrew Tate, right?
Thank you. Miriam, are there other
good answer for
points?
that one.
No, it's a tough one for sure. Yeah.
That's awful, so awful.
Yeah, so there's another participant asking, you mentioned that if you had the chance to give a speech 30 years ago, it would have been the same as today. Does this imply that there hasn't been significant growth in feminism, or that growth has occurred but not in the most essential areas?
Okay. I mean, I think a lot of the challenges we face are very much the same. And when I said, you know, if I would give the speech 30 years ago, it would be like, you know, talking about donor priorities, talking about Western agendas that trump, you know, local, whatever, talking about this myth of localization that has not materialized. You know, we say like local women's groups are in the driver's seat, and we've said that for a while, right? That's not something that came out last year. That's something that's been around for a while, and we've not done it. You know, so again, we are kind of repeating some of the stuff from decades past. You know, in all of our decades of doing this kind of work, we, I think, have evolved, but far too slowly, right? And when we talk about who's in the driver's seat, who's making decisions, who's doing the funding, how is that funding dictating what we do and don't do, you know, that funding is running our lives, right? That dependence on agendas that aren't ours is not new. And so that's what I mean. That's a decades-old problem.
Thank you, Lina.
That's it?
Anything else online, Miriam, or are we good for now?
We have some maybe final reflection here. Another participant added that as an intersectional feminist who is tired of being reactionary, we should see past using the influence of money and actively destroying the significant influence that money has through capitalism in the long run, because as the incredible Audre Lorde would say, we can dismantle the master's house using the master's tools. This was also mentioned in relation with the BDS movement.
Yeah. Yeah. Lean on our feminist foremothers, and Audre Lorde has a lot of beautiful things to say that will help light the way when the path is dark. Yes.
Great. So something that we've heard a little bit in the room and amongst Feminist Edge participants this week is some feeling of tiredness and fatigue and feeling like, oh, it's so hard to stay motivated. So I'm wondering if you can maybe talk a little bit about how do we maintain hope and momentum in feminist activism when there's such persistent pushback, backlash.
Yes. I mean, I think that was on page like 702 of my speaking notes. Yeah, I really thought that I'd planned that out well. Anyway, the problem, like I said, I get on, the microphone is in whatever, and then it takes on a life of its own, and it's beyond my control. But I did have a lot on self-care, on community care, collective care, you know, how we lean on each other, how are we connected and supporting each other. You know, yes, it is so tiring, it's exhausting. No one does this because they think it's fun, you know. But we have each other, right? You have not just this cohort, you have 153, if I'm not mistaken, right? People who, how are you connected? Like, weirdly, I'm part of these kind of mass WhatsApp groups, I love that are, you know, we talked about this, available as a resource, right? That I tap into and say, you know, this is terrible, I don't know what to do about this, you know, this is what just happened to me, this is the pushback that I got. You know, how do I survive this? And I feel like those spaces are becoming more and more important to me because this work is so lonely and isolating. And, you know, we're all in different countries and contexts and, you know, you don't get to see each other and be together very often. But when you are, you know, that is amazing time to recommit to the collective and reforge those networks and say, you know, yes, we're going to keep in touch. Yes, we're going to check in on each other. Yes, we're going to support each other. You know, and I went through I had all this stuff about self-care that is important, but it's also stuff that you already know. You know, people used to tell me all the time, like, if you get to the point where you need a break, you've already gone too far, you know, and all these sort of glib little things that you're supposed to remember. And then you think like, yes, I need to make time. I need to meditate. Oh yeah, meditate. Write that down. You need to meditate. You know, make time for art. You know, be creative. Like, find time in nature. You know, I mean, yeah, all those things, and you know that stuff. So I'm not going to like patronize you with all these, you know, self-helpy ideas, like get a pedicure kind of stuff. But you know, some of it is true, and whatever nourishes you, you have to find and you have to do. Right? I have a dog who probably will send me a big bill for all the therapy at some point. You know, whatever it takes, whatever you need, whatever is going to help you survive and sustain this, I think is what's important. But this tribe that you have around you, I think that would probably be my first point of contact for all things, all troubles, and even all celebrations. Like, even the celebratory part is lonely, because who are you sharing those things with, you know? It's funny, because it's always at the highest highs and the lowest lows that you think, wow, you know, there's nobody around who really feels this in the way that I feel it. And especially now when things seem to be so catastrophic and rights are rolling back. And, you know, I look at things, yes, from the women's rights perspective, also from the Palestinian perspective, and I think, my God, like, does anybody see how terrible this is? You know, look at what's on my screen. My Instagram all day is like a doom scroll, whatever, you know, and I feel like I'm being kind of globally gaslit because it's so catastrophic. And how come, you know, everybody else isn't furious about this all the time? Like, how can you all sit on the bus and not be angry? How can you all sit in this restaurant and, you know, eat your sandwich and not be fuming mad? So, you know, I think we expect that everybody sees things how we see them, but, you know, we all do. So that's what I would say to that. And there's your hope, and there's your feminist fueling station.
Great. Oh, I see one last hand up, and then we'll have to close. Go ahead, Marianne.
Sorry, just following on this, because I hear you a lot about being angry all the time, being furious all the time. And my daughter tells me that already, and she's, you know, 10 years old. And so how do you balance between being angry all the time and, you know, that moving you, being a driver, clearly, and not becoming too toxic, you know, because I'm afraid of becoming too much. I'm afraid of being angry all the time when I'm on the bus, and when I'm walking in my city, when I'm angry at dogs, you know, pooing on the street and not respecting other people. You know, I'm angry all the time for a lot of these things that I feel that are, you know, unjust. And, you know, not to mention the big ones, you know, that I want to fight for every single day of my life. And then I feel, you know, this anger is eating me, you know, and my daughter is telling me.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. You know, I say that the rage has to give us courage, you know, and the courage needs to be to take action. Right, and so that if that anger is the fuel that's like lighting this fire, then what are we going to do? You know, and I tell myself, like, because it can be catastrophic, it can be overwhelming, and the overwhelm can be paralyzing, and that's so easy to do, and I want to do it every single day. But I say, okay, what small action can I take today? Right now, today, what can I do? And I find that, you know, in my small world online, like my little blogs or my little posts, or, you know, my missives on LinkedIn, if anybody sees me there, you know, writing, you can probably imagine the way I'm typing, look at that. You know, that makes me feel better. You know, I think, okay, and if I get like 20 people, 20 like craptastic responses, fine. And one that says, you know, thank you so much, I didn't think of it that way, I say, okay, halas, perfect, thank you very much, awesome. Like, I'm done, I can go to bed, because I did my one little thing. Like, my goals now are very small and simple, and so I make that anger turn into something actionable that is immediate. Because if it is not immediate, that anger is just going to sit and pile up like little pebbles, you know, mountain boulders in your stomach, and it's going to, you know, I don't know, give you an ulcer or whatever thing happens. That's not good. So, you know, I look at, like, I think of micro resistances, micro rebellions, micro movements, micro hopes, small stuff, because the alternative is no stuff.
Micro celebrations too, no?
Yes, and micro celebrations. Yes. Oh my God. Thank you guys so much. Can't believe we trapped you for 2 hours. I said there's no way people are going to sit here for 2 hours. But
well,
bloody hell, you did. Bravo.
I think we've managed.
You know, I don't know how you guys did it.
So Sandra's insisting, so I'll give her a very short word, and then we're wrapping up. Go ahead, Sandra.
No question. It's not a question or nothing. It's just something I recently read that it's about anger, and I think it just fits so well. So if you allow me, I'm going to read it very quickly. It's the prologue of an edited version of The Second Sex from Beauvoir, and it says, there are people who dislike thinkers like Beauvoir because she was angry. Anger, you probably know, is not considered a virtue, and nor is it ladylike. But anger can be intensely powerful. How would anyone fight injustice without being angry that it exists at all? There is a difference between anger, which can be clean and pure, and petulance. The latter makes us pretty and mean, spirited, interested only in our own advancement and not in that of others. But life is not a zero-sum game. There isn't a limited quantity of success or happiness, meaning that if one person achieves something, the rest of us take an automatic step backwards. So please remember as you read that while anger may not be very ladylike, neither was she, nor am I. Hopefully, neither are you. And that's not a bad thing at all. I'd rather be a woman than a lady any day.
Right, nice. Great. Thank you so much, Sandra, for that. That's a very nice note for us to finish on. Lina, thank you so much for being here. I know you're only in the hotel room for one more night, but it'll be a beautiful, colorful night.
Oh my goodness,
yeah, so
beautiful.
So thank you so much. We've really
thank you so much.
Appreciated your insights tonight, but also over the past few days. So wonderful to have you with us. We look forward to having you back in Amsterdam, and we've got to find ways of making that happen.
Absolutely. I've left my cards. I think Miriam has them. So if anyone wants to reach me, poke me, well, I'm on just about every social media thing you can imagine. You just find me and comment and howl and rage and do whatever you want.
Wonderful. Thank you so
Please.
much, Lina.
Thank you so much.
So also I want to thank Norhan.
Yes.
So
thank you both.
It's really wonderful to have had your perspectives and to have you as part of the main show. So really wonderful.
Thank you.
It's the first time I think we've done that in recent years, so thank you very much. I also want to acknowledge and thank the Gates Foundation, in particular our Feminist Edge alumnus, an amazing program advocate, Amanda Lanzaron. I think she's probably online, I hope so. She's been an amazingly supportive ambassador of Feminist Edge, and we're really appreciative of that, so thank you. And the Gates Grant made it possible for many participants from low and middle income countries to be a part of the program, which is so important for us. And also they're supporting us with the Alumni Network and with the event this evening. So thank you very much to Gates for that. Also thank you to people behind the scenes, Miriam and Priscilla and Emily also running around. And to our AV support people from Bourgogne, I think I don't know if I'm saying, is that right? Thank you for your support, and for our colleagues in hospitality. I think Isabel's been walking around. For our alumni and those in the room and online, and for the current cohort and our friends, thank you so much, all of you, for being here and engaging with us. If we've sparked your interest in terms of supporting the program, supporting people in your organization to join Feminist Edge, please do reach out. We have a next cohort for 2026. The deadline is November 21st, so you can already register. We would love to hear from you. If you'd like to sponsor somebody, please do reach out. We really want to make sure that we can keep this an inclusive program and to really be able to hear the voices from so many parts of the world. So thank you, everybody. Please do join us for some drinks now, and we can continue the conversation. For those online, thank you for being with us also. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
So, thanks very much.